Welcome to r/Best of Redditor updates, where OP is pretty sure that her high school students are spying on her in her bedroom. Our next Reddit post comes from r/relationship advice. I'm a high school English teacher and have been for a few years. In that time, as a woman, I've been used to teenage boys behaving awkwardly around me sometimes, and pheromones are part of the deal. There have been occasional comments, but generally in the vein of, "Miss so-and-so has a crush on you," or "Miss, would you be so-and-so's Valentine?" It's all in good humor, in front of the whole class or a large group, and it's well-meaning. My school throws a January ball for seniors, ages 16 to 18, which is basically an opportunity to celebrate the start of another calendar year. As it's after hours, not every teacher has to attend, and this year I was asked to chaperone. There's no alcohol permitted, but obviously some of them sneak in hip flasks and so on. During this month's ball, 2 students were huddled at a table in the corner of the hall, not dancing, just keeping to themselves. I know them well as problematic students who have difficulties socially, but also perform poorly academically. So they don't fit in with the popular crowd or the nerdy crowd. We have some of these every year. Poor hygiene, greasy hair, long fingernails, that sort of thing. Immediately, I could tell that they'd been drinking, from the way they spoke and smelled, and I asked them to hand over any alcohol they had. One of the boys, Stuart, started protesting. He said the following, and I'm 100% sure that this is what he actually said. "Come on, miss. Don't pretend you won't open that bottle of Bailey's when you get home, feet up in your dressing gown, watching the new TV. Give us a break." Now, as soon as he said this, I felt my heart drop into my stomach, and I got cold all over. 1. I had just bought a bottle of Bailey's Irish Cream for myself the weekend before the dance. 2. I am in the habit, on nights where I don't have much work and I want to treat myself, of having a bath and watching a movie or TV show in my dressing gown. 3. My husband bought a new television for Christmas. I asked him how he knew these things, and he feigned ignorance, basically saying that it was a lucky guess. I was so shaken that I left them, and a short while later, they both left. But that night, I could barely sleep, and my paranoia kept growing. I simply cannot believe that he could have guessed all 3 of those things. 1 maybe, but no way all 3. My husband is away for work currently. I phoned and told him about it, and he basically downplayed my concerns, saying I probably mentioned those things at my class at various points, and this student had just remembered it. But I would never mention those things. I just wouldn't. I'm sure I haven't. I've become more skittish at home when I hear noises. I only live in a small house, but when I arrive home from buying groceries, I check every single room and cupboard before I lock the doors. I've also arranged to have the locks changed. When cars stop outside the house, I turn all the lights off and peek at them through the blinds. I'm having trouble sleeping. In class, this student is quiet and the same as ever, not completing homework assignments and distracted in class. My husband is growing increasingly exasperated and worried more for my mental health than the possibility that this student could somehow know details about my personal life. I mentioned it to my supervisor as well, and she basically reasoned that I had either misheard what he said, it was a coincidence, or a combination of the two. What's the play here? I am seriously freaked out, and I don't know how to even begin putting this to rest. Also, OP clarifies that they're in England, and a dressing gown is what Americans would call a robe. Then, 5 days later, OP posted an update. After a thorough search of my house, I found 2 devices. They seem to be camera devices. I don't know if audio is included. One of them was in the smoke detector in my bedroom, while the other was concealed in the wall of my living room. Looking at an old picture of my bedroom, it looks like the smoke detector itself has changed very slightly. I think the new one is a device which the culprit somehow switched with the old one without us noticing. This matter has been referred to the police. If it wasn't for so many of you taking me seriously and giving me practical advice, I wouldn't have had the courage to check, especially given my husband downplaying the concerns. He's been very apologetic and is coming back from his work trip early, but I've asked to spend some time apart and I'll be staying with my parents for a while. I'm glad I raised the issue with my head at the school and a couple of others, as now there's a paper trail. Another suggestion from that thread. Needless to say, I'm completely shaken to my core, and I have the most revolting feeling of my privacy being invaded. I have no idea how many people have been involved in this, but phones have been taken from students, and we should have more answers soon. I won't be making any more posts or updates. Thank you again for everyone affirming me and making me feel sane. Yo, super creepy. I can't figure out which possibility here is worse. Either these kids broke into her home and installed surveillance devices without anyone knowing, or her husband or someone else that she knows and trusts decided to install these to spy on her and I guess is giving the information to her students. All right, now that I say it out loud, I think that one is worse. If these kids struggle to pay attention in class and don't have good hygiene, that doesn't exactly create the image of the type of mastermind that would be required to, break into someone's house and do this and install these devices, including transmitting the data, which actually, I guess they would need access to OP's Wi-Fi, right, to stream the data elsewhere, which makes me think this probably is the husband or someone else. Is this some weird kink thing where he's streaming his own wife to her students because it gets him off, I guess? Our next Reddit post comes from rSlash Am I the Butthole? Am I the butthole for kicking my mom's boyfriend and his kids from the house that I inherited after my mom's death? They went to a homeless shelter. I'm a 19-year-old guy, and my parents divorced when I was 6. My mom got a boyfriend, Josh, and they started living together when I was 9. He had twin daughters, who were 4 when they moved in. Their mother was not in their lives anymore. My mom took them in as their own. I admit that I was a little jealous because they had her full time and me only 50% of the time. I think my mom loved them more too. I was a quiet kid and spent most of my time in my room when my mom had me. I didn't want any siblings. My mom tried, but to no avail. By the time I was 16, I rarely spent time at my mom's place. And when I went to college, I got an apartment, even though my mom lived in the same city as my college. My mom tragically passed in December. Because Josh and her never got married, for some reason, I inherited everything, including her house. I allowed Josh and the kids to still live there. I paid half the bills as he's struggling because of a low-paying job. My lease ends in December, and I decided to move into my house after. I sat down with Josh and told him I was moving in January. Since this is my house, I'll take the bedroom and he'll move to my old room. He started crying how the bedroom is his safe space and all my mom's things are there, which gives him peace. I told him he can move a few of her things to my old room, which is about 1/3 of the size of the bedroom. He started crying even more that he doesn't want to abandon their bedroom. I was pretty pissed at that moment, so I told him to just get out of the house then, as I don't have energy to deal with this garbage. I've since cooled down. But 3 days later, he sent me a message to notify me where he left the keys and that they moved out. I found out they went to a homeless shelter. I got messages from my mom's side of the family how I'm heartless and cruel to kick them out. How the twins lost their mom and home in less than a year. The twins texted me how they can't believe their own brother made them homeless and asked me what they did wrong. My dad and his family told me I did nothing wrong. I do feel bad for them, but I still think I decide who gets what room in my house. Am I the butthole? Then, 10 days later, OP posted an update. A lot has happened since my first post. We had a first mediation meeting about a lawsuit and we reached an agreement. I'll have to pay them 1/4 of the savings my mom left me, which is a lot less than I thought. I met with Josh a day after my post and it went unexpected. I apologized for my hot-headed response. I told him I didn't really mean it and invited him back home. He told me no. He admitted that it was actually very hard for him to live there. He saw my mom everywhere he looked, and it was very hard for him. He took my kicking them out as an opportunity to leave the house without his daughters resenting him. He basically made me out to be a bad man, and he apologized for that. He didn't know that his daughters called my grandparents and me. When he found out, he confessed to his daughters and to my grandparents what he told me. I don't care either way about my grandparents, as we have no relationship. How did he find out about this? Well, my dad talked to him before me. My dad wanted to help him, so he called him. He even got Josh 10 free sessions with his good friend who's a grief therapist. And it's my dad that convinced him to talk to me. My dad is my hero, and in this case, the real master of puppets, lol. Josh will move in temporarily to my grandparents. I talked to my dad about the money. I decided to give Josh the rest of my mom's savings. He can buy a nice apartment and still have some left over. Josh was very happy and thanked me over and over again. I did it for the peace of my mind. we probably won't have much of a relationship moving forward. For me, this is a chapter of my life that's closed. I'll probably sell the house after my graduation from college. It has no sentimental meaning to me. Our next Reddit post is from r/relationship advice. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness. If you don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses are extremely conservative to an insane degree. I wasn't allowed to read Harry Potter, if that makes sense. And my parents were not lax or there are exceptions for my children types of people. They were extremely devout people. And I'm gay. When I was 16, I was outed horribly by my sister who found some gay adult content that I didn't delete from my computer's history. My family, of course, flipped out and demanded I either seek conversion therapy or get out. Luckily for me, my aunt had also defected from the church, so I was able to move in with her, far away. My parents and sister immediately wanted nothing to do with me, but my brother was 6. He was too young to really grasp what was going on and had no phone or social media or anything, so I couldn't contact him. I honestly just assumed he drank the same "in Disney" Kool-Aid and never sought him out. Earlier this year, I got a message from him on Facebook. It was a gigantic apology for not saying goodbye properly and that he wanted me back in his life. Clicking through his profile, I didn't see any Jehovah's Witness proselytizing like my sisters, just pictures of him and his friends being normal teens. I was beyond happy. I messaged him back, we FaceTimed, cried, he caught me up a little on his life, and I caught him up a little on mine. And from there, we started texting regularly. I'm very, very happy about all of this. But he was still living under my parents' roof, and was still heavy in Jehovah's Witness culture. I was nervous about this. He always reaffirmed that he only called and texted when he wasn't in the house, or around other Jehovah's Witnesses, and reaffirmed that he thought the church was awful. Last week, something weird happened. I got an email from my mother. It was a picture from a recent Dells trip that she had taken with my family and another Jehovah's Witness family. Years of no contact, then this? What the hell? I spent days talking this out with my friends before it occurred to me that my brother might have something to do with this. I brought up the email to my brother when I called him yesterday, barely hinting at my suspicions at all, and he unloaded. He had been lying to my parents. He said that I contacted him apologizing and was desperate to get back in contact with the witnesses again, but was too ashamed. But the kicker is that he made a fake Instagram to show them. He plucked all the G-rated pictures from my various social medias and filled it in with captions about how devout I am, how happy I am to have refound God's light, etc. He had taken pictures of me and my best friend, Julie, and added captions like, "the love of my life, my bride-to-be," etc. Like, oh my God! He seemed really remorseful of this ploy, but he was in too deep to stop now. Now, he didn't say as much, but the obvious implication here is that he thought that he could get my family back together. But this isn't some stupid sitcom or The Birdcage. He's catfishing his very emotionally unstable and religious zealot parents into thinking that their F-slur outcast son was reconverting. I have no intention of being in their life ever again, but I'd like to remain in my brother's life, and I don't want this incident to scare him off or sever the small bits of contact that we have now. Then, a few days later, OP posted an update. I'd like to specifically thank one of the commenters who suggested that this wasn't him trying to rope me back, but him trying to escape the cult. You were exactly right. Today, me and my brother talked for the first time since our conversation. He took down the fake Instagram after our conversation, and I gently asked why exactly he did this. He's 15, so he didn't quite have the language to say, "I'm being abused and need to leave the Jehovah's Witness." What he said instead was that mom and dad are crazy and he's become disillusioned with the cult. He even used the word cult. He still believes in God and wants to explore different sects of Judeo-Christianity. My hometown is a small place in the Midwest, and everyone knows who the Jehovah's Witnesses are. They're like those people. So he couldn't covertly go to another service without someone recognizing him and it getting back to my parents. His motive was pretty much what the one commenter said. He said he wants to visit, hang out, and explore the religions around Chicago, but the only way my parents would allow him to leave town is if they knew exactly where he was, who he was with the whole time, etc. So in his head, propping me up as converted was the only way to make it happen. I told him I was completely uncomfortable with that and that my relationship with my parents is over. He apologized and pretty much already knew the logistical problems. I think this was a very maturing ordeal for him. I established myself as a lifeline. I told him that if it ever gets too much, I'll pay for his train ticket and he can stay with me for as long as he likes, even moving in for the remainder of high school. He seemed apprehensive, but the thought's out there, and he now seems comfortable enough to vent about the church and my parents and my crazy sister directly. As for my parents, I just told him to cold turkey stop talking about me. If they ask, he'll tell them that I might have refound Christianity, but I have no intentions of returning to the Watchtower and that he stopped talking to me. Leaving Jehovah's Witness for any reason is grounds for excommunication. I also put my actual Instagram on private, in case they go looking. They might think that I'm not gay, might now have the sliver of hope that I'll return to them, but that's honestly not my effing problem. I personally don't know much about Jehovah's Witness, so I'm not going to comment on it, but there are lots of stories down below commenting about Jehovah's Witness and just kind of religious cults in general. Fat Amy Cheek says, "My best friend is a former Jehovah's Witness. She left when we were in college and was instantly disowned. Imagine a 19-year-old ugly crying because we threw her a birthday party and she'd never celebrated her birthday before. I'm so glad she went back to get her little sister out. Her parents are nuts." That was r/Best of Redditor updates. And if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.